Welcome to the Anxiety Has Purpose 30-Minute Podcast, where you'll hear perspectives about anxiety so extraordinary, you'll go from overwhelmed to inspired. Learn more at anxietyhaspurpose.com. And now your host, Jeannie Phillips.
Well, hey there, Jeannie here. I'm so glad that you tuned in. In this first episode of the Anxiety Has Purpose 30-Minute Podcast, I will bust 3 common myths about anxiety and show you how you can begin to feel better about where you are today by giving you a big picture view of what I think anxiety is really all about. But before we jump in, I just want to read a message that I got recently from a previous client. Today, I have a very different perspective of myself and how I handle people and situations in my life. I can say that thanks to the Envision process, I have a lot less anxiety and stress. So if you're listening, Solange, thank you so much. I love hearing from people about how the different tools that I use and teach help them to find relief. Okay, so let's get right into today's conversation. Anxiety is fear expressed in the body as awful symptoms like heart palpitations and dizziness and tingling and sweating and not being able to sleep and headaches, and also feeling overwhelmed and feeling like something awful is about to happen and not being able to calm down. And these are just a few of the things. For me, anxiety was feeling like I had a huge, thick rubber band wrapped around my chest. I could never take a satisfying deep breath, and I literally thought I was dying. I even had bizarre symptoms like post-panic and anxiety attack fevers. But the fear itself feels vague and out of control, and it leads to an internal dialogue that is anything but peaceful, and it's something that actually makes the anxiety worse. We say things like, I shouldn't worry so much, or I'm too sensitive, or I just need to calm down, or if I had gone to sleep at a more reasonable time last night, I might not be feeling so bad right now. This is self-talk that strengthens the anxiety feedback loop. We're anxious, and then we get angry at ourselves for being anxious. But what happens is that the automatic mechanisms that are telling the body that there is real danger present push back against our efforts to calm ourselves down. And the small, I don't want to be anxious, I just want things to change, I want to feel better voice that's on the surface has very little power when it comes to managing anxiety. So how do we deal with this? How do we find real relief? Because the being hard on ourselves is definitely not working, and we can't just talk ourselves out of it, because that creates this internal war where anxiety almost always wins. Well, anytime there's conflict, we seek resolution, right? Well, it just makes sense. We bring everybody to the table, we hear all sides, and we try to talk it out. But there's a problem with trying to use this kind of approach with anxiety, because anxiety's voice is hidden in the shadows. It's not on the surface chattering about what's going on right now. It's under the surface in charge of fight or flight. So there's the rub. How do we talk to a part of us that is reacting automatically to what's going on around us? How do we head that off at the pass? How do we effectively influence something that is hidden from view and working behind the scenes? I'm talking about the subconscious mind here, and its a very big role when it comes to fear. But before I talk about how to influence the subconscious, let's look at what the subconscious is really afraid of, because that will help you to make sense of what's going on here. So this question is actually really easy to answer. The subconscious mind does a lot of things. It manages all the stuff that we don't think about, like digesting food and breathing and regulating blood pressure and repairing cells and so many things that we don't even know about, let alone think about. But it really only has one main objective with respect to managing the state of the physical body, and that is to stay alive. And here's the connection that I want you to make with this. As a direct result of this goal to stay alive, to survive, we actually adopt a secondary fear. And that is a fear of being cast out, left alone, abandoned, and isolated. And it means that most of our fears and most anxiety actually comes from an instinctually driven need to belong and fit in. It's a behavior that is coded into our DNA because survival is best assured by being part of a group or part of a pack. Get outcast from that, and our chances of survival drop dramatically. We can learn a lot about this survival-driven behavior by watching animals in the wild, because we as humans are probably more pack-like than we would care to admit. So the challenge is that we mostly don't even know that we're doing this trying to fit in thing. We would argue that we're independent thinkers, but in reality, under the surface, we seek to blend in, and it results in a chronic hiding of who we really are. Because there's this irrational fear that sits in the subconscious mind, and it says this: if I don't fit in, I might die. Plain and simple. I know it sounds over the top, but it's there for all of us, and it causes us to habitually look to others to tell us that we do belong and that we are okay. And here's what's really interesting. The level of anxiety that we experience shows us the distance between what we show the outer world to fit in and who we really are on the inside. So how do we address this? Where else might a yes answer to the "am I okay" question come from? And how might we let go of this need to belong if it's in the subconscious? Well, these types of questions can't be answered by anyone or anything outside of you, and they can't be answered even by winning an internal debate. So we can't just check in with our own logic, that chattering voice in our head, because all that voice knows is an analysis of the past and a projection of the future, where okay is unknowable to an anxious mind. Because when anxiety is active, this voice is looking through a lens of fear and worry, where the past is very painful and the future is just terrifying. So the logical thinking mind can't help us here, because it can only assign belonging to what it already knows, which is fear. And that keeps us locked in the same old loop of looking outside of ourselves for knowing that we're okay. Being able to hold "I am okay" as a constant personal truth, regardless of what's going on around you, comes from making contact with another voice within. A voice that doesn't sound like the ever-present critic and commentator. A voice that speaks to each of us more directly and quietly through calm knowing. And it is up to each of us to find it. This is self-acceptance. This is being able to say and know that regardless of the opinions of others, regardless of the evidence of danger, I am okay. But it's tricky because we're relational beings. We seek and we want to know and we want to understand ourselves. And ultimately, we want to survive, right? Well, this means that deferring to another feels natural and appropriate when the other carries wisdom or knowledge that we don't have. And maybe that is okay. But that feeling of natural should be carefully monitored, as should our intent when we seek out information about ourselves. For example, a nose kiss would feel completely natural in some areas of the world, right? Whereas in others, it would be extremely offensive. And it illustrates how this idea of natural is not an accurate indicator of what is right or wrong, nor is it an indicator of something that is helpful to us in any given moment. It just more reliably shows us what is familiar. My point is that we subconsciously ask other people to answer the "am I okay" question every single day, because it's what feels natural to us and it's what's most familiar, because it's governed by this hidden survival-driven need to fit in, but it's not helping us. And the problem is it's keeping us stuck. One, because we don't even mostly know that we're doing it. And two, it prevents us from being able to connect with and hear another voice inside, a voice that would answer the "am I okay" question with a confident yes and without any confirmation from out there. So back to the logic piece of this puzzle. Yes, you can sort of argue logic against this fear, and it's our first go-to defense, but it just doesn't stick very well. We say things like, I'm tough, and I'm actually tougher than most, and I'm fine on my own, when no, not really. We need each other. Or we say, I don't really care what others think, when in reality, yes, we do, at least at a subconscious level, and we have to become aware of that. Or we say, I can just power through this. But then we pay the price with rising anxiety because in powering through, we miss the point entirely and we miss connecting with that different voice that's inside. So a multi-layered solution is necessary to tackle this issue and to successfully reduce anxiety. And I'm going to give you the 3 steps that I recommend. So here's what they are. Step 1, reprogram the subconscious mind to not react to the triggers that it is tuned into. Step 2, we stop hiding who we really are. Be, show, and live our truest selves, which feels scary at first, but it becomes easy once we undo the subconscious need to belong. And it actually becomes really easy when we take care of the 3rd and last step, which is to rid ourselves of the fear of death altogether, which, yes, you absolutely can do, but you must learn how to access a state of mind that doesn't necessarily come naturally to us. So let's look at these one by one. So this first step is learn how to reprogram the subconscious mind is the easiest. And I invite you to subscribe to my free 3-part training where I teach you an easy exercise to do this. You can find a link to that if you're interested in the details of this recording, or go to anxietyhaspurpose.com for more information. Step 2, show up and be seen is much more challenging, so move toward this goal in ways that feel doable. And I encourage you to find a community where you are safe to practice this, because there is nothing more damaging to a person with anxiety than to share something that is near and dear to your heart and have it be criticized or shut down. If the I don't fit in fear that's under the surface gets triggered and you don't have support, then you are back to square one. Okay, so now for step 3, get rid of the fear of death, which is what releases us from the need to survive, need to belong loop. But how do we do that? Well, it isn't hard per se, but it does take a bigger commitment. In order to transcend this foundational fear, we have to access an expanded state of awareness. Now, this is not philosophy. It's not esoteric table talk. It's a real experience that is had by entering into other states of mind that can be measured, physical states, measured by different types of brainwaves activity. And I'm talking about beta waves, alpha waves, and theta. See, our natural state of mind is usually operating in beta, constantly thinking and analyzing, processing, deciding, planning and sorting, comparing. Basically, it never stops, right? It's what feels most natural and familiar, but remember that whole warning with the natural and familiar thing. I'm not saying that this is bad. I'm just saying that it needs to take a back seat on a regular basis to alpha and theta. And look, I'm one of the most grounded woo-woo people you'll ever meet, and my goal is to demystify the whole otherworldly realms thing and to build a bridge between where we are, stuck in anxiety, and where we are being invited to go. We are being invited to evolve and to experience these expanded states of being firsthand. Not just talk about lofty ideas of love and kumbaya, but to experience love and unconditional acceptance as verbs, where you physically feel them moving through and filling up every single cell of your body. This is what I experienced in an experience that I later discovered through my own search to understand what had happened to me that was very similar to a near-death experience almost 30 years ago. No, I didn't die, or at least I don't think so. I was alone at the time and not hooked up to any machines that would have said, yep, she's dead. But I did see a tunnel and a light so profoundly and exquisitely beautiful that I have no way to describe it to you. There simply are no words. And this is a place that has a realer than real quality to it. And it makes this everyday life experience that we all call